And I realized that this is the time when aerospace is really booming in the country, and there's lots of scope in this field, and there's a huge knowledge gap between what the service wants and what the industry has. So that I'm able to fill that gap to a large extent.
So when are we going to make the transition where we are, we consider private industry adequate and capable enough to become the lead integrator instead of just being a sub vendor or a major vendor or tier 1 vendor to HAL? Good afternoon everyone, and welcome to the next episode of M Dialogues. Today I thought we'll talk about the aerospace industry in India. And for my guest, once again, I have Rear Admiral Philipose Pynumootil, a close friend, colleague, fellow resident in Goa. Pynumootil, I introduced him last time, but for the benefit of our new viewers, let me introduce him once again. He is a Laurentian from, not from the Lawrence School, so now my school, but from Lovedale. Comes from a renowned military family. His father retired as an air marshal, as a PS George, that is. His brother was in the Navy too, and unfortunately, passed away in an air crash in an islander, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right, 85 years.
And in fact, his brother-in-law, Brigadier Chako, is in the army currently serving.
Cavalry. No, he's retired. Sir.
He's retired.
Cavalry.
Yeah. And Pynumootil has, of course, done everything that a naval officer is required to do. So all the courses, including RCDS in London, commanded 3 ships. But more importantly, when it comes to aviation and the aviation sector, I think his journey will be quite unique. Having done 3 years as Principal Director of Aircraft Acquisitions, followed by another 3 years as the Assistant Chief of Naval Staff, Air, and then 4 years over here in Goa as a Flag Officer Goa area and Flag Officer Naval Aviation. So, 10 years intensely involved in running the aviation branch of the Navy, I think is quite a unique career path, which few people I think would have done something akin to what you have done. Many things were done during these 10 years. In fact, many people regard it, insofar as acquisitions, etc., happened, as the golden period of the naval aviation. So, would you like to talk about that, Paina, as to?
Absolutely, sir. So, golden period, I happen to be there, so I didn't make it the golden period, but I consider myself very fortunate to be there in aviation during this time. So, many of the projects I have had the privilege of, being there from the signing phase to the delivery of each of these aircraft. So, if I list them out in random order, 45 MiG-29s came in this time, 12 P-8 Boeings, which I had the pleasure of meeting you on each of my 7 visits to Seattle at the Boeing factory. 12 Boeings, 16 Hawk aircraft, 17 Hawk aircraft, 16 ALH, 12 Dorniers, microlights, and some Kama 28 upgrades, and a sizable number, a huge number of aircraft in this time, sir. So, and from the rotary wing, the MH-60R, the negotiations went on for 2.5 years, and it didn't get signed in my time. Soon after I left, it went through the FMS project. So, I've been lucky to see all 3, the fighters, MR in the form of the Boeing P-8I, as well as the helicopters, the Kama 28 MLU, for instance.
So, Paina, can we also talk a little bit about your transition? After you retired, it's been how many years right now? It's been
3.5 years.
3.5 years. So, your transition, I know that you're still heavily involved in the aviation sector. Would you like to talk about your transition after you left the Navy?
It's been very exciting. So, I was all set to relax in Goa, ride my bike, swim in the sea, and play my guitar badly. But lots of opportunities came up. My first opportunity was to join IIT Bombay. I joined as an adjunct faculty, and in 6 months they elevated me to professor of practice. So I've been there for the last 3.5 years. That's been hugely interesting, and I've been advising a couple of companies on aerospace, and I realized that this is the time when aerospace is really booming in the country, and there's lots of scope in this field, and there's a huge knowledge gap between what the service wants and what the industry has. So that I'm able to fill that gap to a large extent. Sir.
So you're sort of uniquely placed that you've seen both sides. You've seen aviation from inside, from the inside the Navy, and you've been involved with industry outside. So I thought let's start with what is your impression about where we stand? And let's start with maybe the large players. Okay. And then we can come down to the MSMEs thereafter.
Very nice.
So your experience in as you've traveled and seen these large players who've either entered or have now established themselves in the aviation sector, how do you think they have sort of played out over the last?
It's a very interesting question, sir. So I've had the advantage of seeing it as a customer. So in random order, hugely I'm impressed with, say, Tassel. I would put Tassel on top of the line, Tata Advanced Systems Limited. And I don't work for Tassel, so whatever I'm saying is it's totally unbiased. So my first visit was to their plant where they were making the S-92 Sikorsky cabins or the fuselage of these aircraft. So I had, like I said, seen the Boeing factory, and also when I went there, I didn't really expect anything great. I was really surprised to see it's as good as any international factory. I mean, if you see the jigs and fixtures, the whole setup. And what's phenomenal is that was set up in, like, from a greenfield facility. It just took 9 months to set up that whole facility, and they were very forward thinking. So at that time itself, they had space to replicate that in the similar time. I mean, I've not gone there after that, so probably they built up one more. And they started churning out these airframes. There was one facility in Japan and one in India. And I was really inspired to know that within 3 years, they shut down the Japanese factory because our products were better and much more cost efficient. And so some 35 fuselages are made every year. So, and besides that, they were making the empennage, that's the tail portion, and the wing box where the wings are fitted of the C-130. Exactly. Yeah. And thereafter they've gone on for the Chinook as well as the
So the S-92, every S-92 that is made in the world right now, is the
absolutely
the body is made over here.
Body is made from here. So I mean, there are I saw a lot of cynics say that what's the big deal and all, but for me it is a big deal because what happens is they do all the wiring and everything there, and then of course major part, I mean the sensors and the rotors and everything come on in their main plant in the US. So for me, I think it's a huge deal. And if you see the classic facilities, like even the C-130 facility is great. So over there, it was headed by a burly Texan over there, the C-130. So I had a chance to talk to him. So I asked him, like, if you can tell me frankly, how do you compare your American facility? You've obviously been running something in the US, and when you come here, how do you compare the two? Without batting an eyelid, he said, India is much better, much more efficient. I said, why do you say that? He said, the average age of the American worker there is 50 plus. Our average age was 25 or 26 years at that time. And I later learned that these guys and girls are sourced from ITIs, polytechnic kind of things from all over the country. And they have a training facility within the premises itself. And this delta of training, it just takes 3 months. So within 3 months, they're on the shop floor and doing brilliant work. So I see there's a lot of capability which we have, and probably we don't see it in us, And then you look at the Tassel journey. Thereafter, they went on. Sorry, it seemed like some PRO of Tassel. They're making the C295, the replacement of the Avro. So the C295, when it came in, like we had some specs for an MR, and I think speed-wise and a couple of other criteria, it was falling short. But I very strongly pushed for us jumping onto the bandwagon as far as the C295. And fortunately, after I left, I'm really happy that the Navy is getting 12 of these. It's to my mind, it's very good to latch on to the ecosystem which is coming into the country, because you have 56 Avros which are being replaced, phased out and brought in, and we're getting this in. So then the Air Force is a big brother. So the point is now our training will be common. So even now our basic transport training happens in Yelahanka. So we'll have a common platform as it is. We are being trained on the Avro and Dornier. Now we'll be trained on the C295 with them. And Coast Guard is also getting that with anti-pollution stuff and all that.
Yeah, so all that is fine. I can see, I mean, even I have had the good fortune of having visited Tassel several times, in my previous jobs in the Navy. And great to see what they were doing, and I can see the transition that from making, first on smaller parts and then on larger parts, then stuffing it with cabling, etc. And now finally moving on to full aircraft with full aircraft with the C295.
And Apache and Chinook.
So that transition, you can see that they've started, but still at the end of the day, this is all licensed production or build to print. There is no real, I would say, design and development. There is no innovation right now. Maybe in certain processes, etc., there might be a certain amount of innovation that goes in. What about that? Isn't that isn't that a key part of this journey that we have to take in aviation?
Yeah, very good point, sir. Now it's like in the industry parlance, there's the difference between know how and know why. Know why is what you said, what we should aim for. Know how is, you get a build to print thing and then you have skill and you build it. But I feel it's a start. So where there was the monolith of HAL, I mean, hats off to HAL, I mean, they've supported half the aircraft. We've flown out from HAL, fantastic organization or something, but we need organizations which can feed HAL, in the sense like, for example, now LCA, there's always a crib, H.E. Marshall, I'm a huge fan of his, hugely outspoken test pilot, great guy. So he's talked about how HAL is not able to meet the requirements and all, and the point is now they're offloading lots of the production to the private agencies, like for example, VEM Technologies, another company in Hyderabad, or Tassel, or L&T, and all the L&T makes the wings, and VEM makes the center fuselage wings, and all that with composite facilities which are there in these companies. So that will be able to ramp up the production. So ideally we are looking at something like 16 aircraft a month. So that is possible only if you offload these facilities, and that permits these companies to grow. So and what I feel is, in some way, when you're building facilities, if you're building something which is world class, fit enough for Sikorsky to kick out a Japanese company and get us in, then our guys have those fantastic skills to build something of our own. So I look at it in a very positive sense. So the development, design, and all is happening with ADA and all these agencies and cabs and all these, all Bangalore-based things. We are building future, the AMCA, TED-BF and all. So those skills of production will be used when we build our own platform. So I look at it in a very positive way, and huge skills and a work ethic. So if you look at Maruti in the late 80s and all that, when one brought in, it was a sea change and everything from maintenance to what you expected from a vehicle. And the same way you bring that work ethic of Sikorsky or Boeing inside here, it's a huge step for us.
So you spoke about HAL, and of course, one has heard both the good and the bad about HAL. But one critique, I would say, in the way we have gone about in the aviation industry is, so far, I think with the sole exception of the C295, which is just coming in right now, every aircraft that has been made for the Air Force or for the Armed Forces, essentially, if not bought from abroad, has been made by HAL. So HAL now might have, in the sense, branched out and reached out to other companies like L&T, etc., which you mentioned, and VEM, etc., and for parts of that aircraft. And those parts, I think, are getting more and more complex, what they're sort of farming out. But the integrator has always been HAL. When are we going to make the transition where we are, we consider private industry adequate and capable enough to become the lead integrator instead of just being a sub vendor or a major vendor or tier 1 vendor to HAL?
A good point. Well, like now there are, so it's not just small quantities. Making a wing, making a fuselage is huge. It's a huge deal. So besides that, there's a lot of avionics which is coming there. I'm taking random names. I know plenty of companies, but like for example, like if you look at multifunctional displays, MFDs. There's a company called Samtel in Delhi. Random. I have no great interest in it. It's a great company. But so they make these MFDs which are absolutely world class. So multifunctional displays are, for now, all modern aircraft have glass cockpits. So basically, the conventional gauges are out, and you get this MFDs in. So you have companies like that. So the point is, tomorrow you're making a Su-30, you want to upgrade it or something, these companies bring it in. Or let's say a mission computer. So what happens is, in the Soviet aircraft, they don't let go of their the protocols of the mission computer. So if you want to say, I won't take specific examples because it would not be right, which aircraft and what. So like, let's say if you wanted to integrate a Israeli missile on a Russian aircraft. So you they don't give you the protocols to integrate that in that mission computer, so you replicate the mission computer, make another mission computer. So for all these things, they use private companies. So it's not entirely done by HAL. So they are netted in with all these companies. So for that matter, even if you look at Boeing, I mean, they source things from all over the world. I mean, the remote things. So when
can't I push
I
you
once gone to
slightly more?
Romania during my RCDS thing, and we had visited some random factory there. They said, this undercarriage is made for the 777 or some crazy thing.
But you think, I mean, our larger companies and our defense companies right now, there are quite a few of course the first tier players. Have they reached a stage where they can be the lead? I mean, and say take on this responsibility of being the prime and then subcontract to other agencies?
That's possible only if we do a kind of the last discussion we had also is I strongly feel like the naval utility helicopter. Being a helicopter chap, it's something very close to my heart. The Chetak replacement should have happened 10 years ago. Now what happens is now you're forcing the ALH for. I also said that it was fantastic for coastal security. So I have nothing against the ALH, but I'm just giving an example. So if you want to get a replacement of the ALH, I would say that exactly what you're saying. Choose the best aircraft, and the point is there are so many. I mean, like in that 4.5 ton category, there are 3 or 4.
No, but you're still talking about getting a foreign design and then making it in India.
I'm just getting at that, sir.
Yeah.
So this is exactly what you're saying. So what happens is now 4.5 ton categories, there are 3 or 4. There's the AW109, there's the S70, and the Airbus helicopter. So between these 3 or 4, take any of them. So I'm not favoring any of them. Choose any of them, they're fine. Get them into anyone, Adani, get into Mahindra, any of the big players. Thump the table and ask for 70% indigenization. So the world market is, there are no customers. So these guys, we have the strength in numbers. So if you tell Airbus or Augusta, no, Augusta is no longer a bad word. So any of these guys who, you do an FET, find the best platform. I'm not advocating anyone. Choose any of them. I'm fine with all these 3. They are all operating in India. They are all damn good. Get them into the country. Demand 60% indigenization, 70% indigenization. So this big player gets that gen and then goes for the next helicopter, because building it from scratch, there's no chance. And who will have the bandwidth? Now the point is, now let's assume you are heading Mahindra, sir. Will you put in millions with no assurance of an order? There's no questions. Unlike you've been in the US, DA, the fact is now, like all these prestigious projects, they normally make 2 companies compete. So you pump money, let's say the Osprey, V-22 Osprey or something. So you pump in millions into 2 companies, they compete.
And then you choose one. Yeah.
Exactly. So the point, do we have that bandwidth? We pump everything into the DRDO or these guys. So you want this, then put in money, sir. And in the amount is huge. So therefore, you want an alternative to HAL, this is the only way, what I said, sir. And the thing is, then you imbibe the 70%, and the thing is that you give the Navy a platform which they want.
And then maybe...
not what they want, that will meet their requirements. They're perfectly fine with the ALH if the ALH were to meet the afloat requirements.
And then maybe, this can be a bridge program where for the first 1 or 2 iterations, you base it on a foreign design. And then gradually you build up your own design capability firstly through iterative improvement, and then you break out into something maybe totally your own.
Absolutely. So like for example, now there are very prestigious projects going on. You look at the twin engine deck based TED-BF, and in fact, I think there's a full group of guys who comes out with these really complex abbreviations. So TED-BF is twin engine deck based fighter. Then there's something DBMRS, deck based multi-role helicopter. And so on. Like last time I said, the point is now when you make a land-based fighter and try to take it on a ship, you always fail. The Rafale started as a ship-based thing, and then you modify it. It's much easier to
switch the other way around.
So that's why this deck-based MRH is the way to go. So now the point is, now if we work consolidated and combine our forces as from a nation-first kind of a way, that's the way ahead, sir. Rather than a collaborative rather than a competitive.
So, okay, enough of the tier 1 or the large, conglomerates which are there in the integration space and even in the manufacturing phase. What about the next couple of layers, the MSME sector? Isn't that a real happening place? I mean, where, where isn't there immense scope? Because I think your investment required is considerably less.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would say even because the investment is less, your risk-taking ability is slightly greater in that
Yeah.
case. And therefore, to enter that space, have we created the right ecosystem, or still too many barriers and things like that?
No, it is great. I mean, I think the government has taken some beautiful initiatives, like you would have heard of the IDEX and TDF, Technology Demonstration Fund, and again, I'm biased, so I think the Navy is doing great. I mean, we've got our VESI, and ship production wise also, we are the first off the block from the 60s and all that. And the fact that we built our own aircraft carrier, our own nuclear submarine and all that, I'm super proud to be an ex-naval officer. So it's great. Now, the small players, I mean, there's lots of room for everyone. So, like when I'm on both sides of the table, the fence, I've seen, like, I would say that the smartest move for a small-time player is to choose some low-value item, even if you decide to produce seat belts or windscreen wipers or something, and sit back and watch the fun, wait to see who wins the contract, and go and tell him, hey, I've got these world-class, I've got this certification and all that, I'll give you these things.
But I mean,
Say rescue hoists, winches and this, that. There are small players like that.
But is it a difficult task for them to go through the certification process and make sure that, I mean, is there handholding required in that place?
There is handholding, and it's fairly, very good. So we've got these indigenization cells in, like, essentially for naval aviation in Goa, looks after the Russian fleet and anyway, we have two naval aircraft yards, and anyway, Goa and Cochin. So Cochin looks after the western side of indigenization, and here for Russians. And they've got the naval aviation has this technology roadmap and indigenization roadmap. And there's, in fact, maybe if you've not seen it, I'd love to take you there. They've got a kind of an exhibition of things, and the vendors are allowed to go there anytime. So it's very neatly placed as to what they've already done, low-end things, like it's something as simple as a split pin, to mid-range and then high-end stuff. And then there's this wish list of stuff which we need. Like a simple thing like MiG-29 tires, MRF makes them. You change them after every 30 landings. So stuff like that, And the thing is, it's got to be financially viable. So tires make sense. If you have 40 MiGs and you want to keep changing it, makes sense. If there's, like the other day in one of the conferences, guys were talking about indigenizing the aviation component of a carrier, arresting gear system and this and that. It doesn't make sense at all. I mean, because
your requirements are going to be few and
absolutely. So I very clearly told them that go for the expendables. Like for example, in the arresting gear system, for example, the cable is 500 meters long, and there's a 90-meter pendant. The pendant is changed after 50 arrestments. The huge 500 meters changed after 500 arrestments. So make that cable. But the point is, the whole rig, you'll have to wait like hell to, maximum we'll make the third carrier, and maybe we switch to the US system or something where you don't use this and all that. So that doesn't make sense. So what I feel is it needs a bit of focus on and to guide the guys as to which way to go. And the other thing is, in a dream world, I would think that there's someone to kind of regulate what people are chasing. Like for example, let's say now post the Sindhu and all, there's a huge emphasis on drones, loitering munition here and there. So a couple of times when I've gone for these meetings, there's some 30 companies. So maybe they're all doing the same thing, So what I feel is that if we've achieved something as a country, then just go on to the next thing. I mean, like say two of us are making the same thing. What are we gaining?
Yeah, I've attended several Aero Indias where sometimes you see the enormous number of companies which have moved into the unmanned and the drone space, small drones, quadcopters and things like that. But I think there is still some distance to go into, because even in there, they're evolving quite rapidly, whether you're going to first person view, whether you're going for, these days they're talking about with fiber optic links and set where you do away with the electronic, how to operate in a GPS denied environment, how to operate through jamming, etc. So there is space in each of these, but I agree that there has to be some degree of consolidation, etc. What about the youth who are there in these? I mean, let's roll back slightly, if we can bring in the youth and academia also. What is the role that academia and preparing the young people to take up these assignments? Are they excited about it, and how do you sort of provide this stream?
Super.
Because finally it all comes down to human resource.
I'm glad you asked this, and sir, I would refer, you have a lot of viewers, so I want to bust a couple of myths. So when I mean, was growing up, I couldn't spell IIT. So I would never even enter these hallowed grounds. So I'm super thrilled to be part of that. And you know, there are these notions in our mind that, oh, these guys are trained and they go away, you know, we subsidize education and all that. I was hugely inspired to see in the Aerospace Department of Bombay, Powai, there are 24 professors. 21 of them are either single or double PhDs from the US.
And all working here, yeah.
Who've come back here, sir. They've got phenomenal salaries over there. They've dumped that and come back here to give back to our fantastic country. There's a guy called Chandra, one of the brightest guys. He worked for 15 years in General Electric. He came back here for a pittance. I mean, they're not here for the money. So they get a really
Basic,
broken
I mean, yeah.
I mean, amenities also
IT
some very basic education. I mean, I hope someone is listening and give them good accommodation for starters. I mean, it's totally ramshackle. It's one of the best IITs in India. It's set up in 1958. The houses are almost as old, and I mean, they're slowly building up this. Nandan Nilekani donated 400 crores and all that, but all that goes to the research parts. I really hope these facilities improve for these guys, but the commitment they have is fantastic. So that they're paying back to the country. So they're coming back there and teaching the students what the country needs. So many times when I first went there, I said, what the hell, these guys go away. Then he said, don't blame them. He says, we don't have the ecosystem. Then I said, look, there's TASL, there's this. He says, no. He says, I train my guys to design aircraft. So the only place they can design is ADA and all. So that's why out of frustration they go
overseas.
Overseas. Some of them will join Deutsche Bank or something where there again, these companies go and they employ you for your brain power. So Goldman Sachs or something, he's not bothered whether you're in computer science or aviation or whatever, he's
or a chemical engineer,
employing
whatever,
you for your brain. So those guys go. I mean, all the best to them, and I have no judgment. But the other people, they go there and they come back here. So now, what can they bring to the table? So I'll talk about my, like in the time I was there, I'll just see where the huge contribution can be made by the IITs. And now currently, I'm the lone guy in Bombay. There are two naval guys, two admirals in Chennai and one army, General Shankar, Lieutenant General Shankar, very respected guy. And Delhi, I think, has one. There are 23 IITs in India. There's no one anywhere else. So we need to entrench ourselves in these places. And what have I brought to the table? I take lectures. In my course-mates will laugh to think I'm teaching IIT guys. So what happens is now I take aero engines, for instance.
Right.
So these professors are 35, 30-year-old guys. So I immediately look at the lesson plan, and wherever I see Greek symbols, theta, rho, and all that, I say, brother, mathematics and physics and all, core physics, please cover that. I cover the practical aspects. So the aerodynamics or landing on a ship, or problems faced in, say, ALH when you operated in the Siachen versus the sea, or basic requirements, what is tool control, what is performance-based logistics, those day-to-day issues faced which they are oblivious of, even the professors are oblivious of that. So that's the gap I fill. What's the other thing I bring to the table? I took a bunch of the brightest of those guys, there were 3 professors and 2 PhD guys. NAY Goa opened their doors to us. And when I went there, they're all very close friends of mine who I worked with. So I told the guys, I said, I'm coming with these people, give me problem statements. So they gave us 4 problem statements for the MiG, which was plaguing the MiG thing. So the first was to have an engine preservation rig for the MiG. Second was a compressor washing rig, and there were 2 structural problems. One was, and I better not give too much of detail. So the structural problems were done in a jiffy by this Chandra guy with his GE background. The compressor washing rig, now this is an interesting part, which hopefully the powers that we are listening, they wanted 90 lakhs. 90 lakhs is nothing, sir, to develop this. So we put up a case, and the aviation directorates went all out to help because they saw value in this. Unfortunately, with absolute respect for the finance guys, but they're laid down procedures. So they said, hey, give me a performance bank guarantee, give me an integratory pack. IIT said, no way, we are an academic institution, we can't do that. So we kept, they're not trying to finger us or something, but the problem is that's their system. So it went back and forth for some 2 years, and I'm super proud to say that we got it cleared 3 months ago. So now with your experience also, you'll know that in the finance side, it's that look back math for. If there's a precedence, you can do anything. So now you can build a nuclear submarine also through IIT. So that's one breakthrough which I'm very proud of. And now the other 3 cases of mine will just fly through. So how they do it is that a PhD guy, one of the professors takes it as his responsibility. And based on the complexity of the problem, he either tasks a PhD chap, or we have some 10 of our naval guys doing MTechs in the IITs. So he doesn't need to be the naval guy, but he tasks those students. So the students are also thrilled to do real world problems. Otherwise, it's some hypothetical thing which will never be used. But just think of it. Let's say you're doing your MTech there, you know that what you've done is being used on a MiG-29K. You'll be so thrilled.
Absolutely.
So it's a win-win situation, and we need to cash in on this. One more thing. DFPDs, Delegation of Financial Power to Defence Services, a beautiful thing which came out some 5 years ago. I was surprised to see there is a serial, for the lay public, it's serial number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, talks about, say, works and this, and there are various heads. So there's one head which mentions IIT by name.
Okay.
It doesn't say academia, it doesn't say engineering institution, it says IIT. So you can actually code that and get money, and you can do wonders. So what happens is 90 lakhs, he makes a prototype. After that, they replicate it. They make as many as the Navy needs. And the other point is, once you've developed it for a MiG-29, I don't know whether the other fighters have it, So if it's a Su-30, obviously the engine is much power. This MiG-29 has a 9,000 kg thrust. Su-30 must be double. So there, you up the thing, upscale and all that, and you can use it for many things. So you invest in academia, you get brilliant results.
So you said one thing in passing about the PBL contract, the performance-based logistics. So that brings us into maintenance.
Maintenance, brilliant.
And I thought we'll end over there because we spent a lot of time. That so far our conversation has been largely about production and manufacturing, etc., and designing. But there's a huge market and a huge space in the maintenance sphere as well.
Brilliant.
So your views on how we can capitalize on this, and how can we, in fact, maybe apart from meeting our own requirements, we can become a hub in a sense, at least for the region, and then maybe even beyond the region. Because finally, manpower, trained manpower is something that we've got an abundance of.
Absolutely. I totally, fantastic questions. So PBL, let's talk about PBL. PBL is performance-based logistics. So this was a relatively new concept for us, because otherwise we were in the Russian system. Again, that's Russians, great guys. They've supported us for so many years. They're still supporting us, great people. But what I'm saying, the PBL with the Boeing, that was my first tryst with PBL, performance-based logistics. What it means is you pay for a serviceability rate. So, for example, now when these aircraft came in, so if you, in simple terms, let's not talk about Boeing. Now you import, say, X aircraft. So you demand a serviceability rate of, say, 90%.
Right.
So this guy figures out and gives you a figure.
To maintain that this is what
is
going to cost you.
Exactly. So, and then the parameters are, one is the serviceability rate, other is your consumption rate, obviously. So, if you're going to, we call it the utilization rate. So, if you say I'm going to fly 100 hours, I'm using random figures. So, let's talk about the Boeing. Boeing over there, I'm giving random figures. I'll say per airframe, I'm going to fly 200 hours a month. It's not that, but I say 200 hours a month. So, the guy, and then I want 90% serviceability. So, obviously, he's looking at the wear and tear on space and all. This doesn't count, that fuel, tail pani and all is yours. It's not. So he's figuring out that at this rate of flying, to maintain my 90% thing, these are the components which might fail. So I've got to maintain these stock spares so as to keep that flying. If I go below 90% serviceability, 90% would mean out of 10 aircraft, 9 are flying, in simple terms. If I go below that, I pay a penalty. So when we negotiated with Boeing, again, this was a totally new. It's akin to you buying your MacBook and they always try to con you with a
service contract.
Which none of us as Indians, we normally don't, and Fauji's we never do. You pray to God that it will stay service. But the point is, you can't estimate, like when the guy says like 20,000 a year, he says, very bullshit, how can I pay? So they give X figure, which was way too high.
I think you get sticker shock when you see that number.
Exactly. So and the point is, now you don't know whether the Mac is going to fail or not. So you wait. So then we said, look, we are testing the waters. Let's do it for 3 years
and see how it goes.
And we reduced. I won't give figures. We said, okay, instead of 90, give us this. Instead of so and so hours, give us this, and not entire thing. But look, let's look at the weapons sensors. This, that. So it came to. It was less than, if it was like X, it was less than half X.
Okay.
We agreed to that, and we were pretty surprised that it worked really well. So for 3 years it happened. Then there's something called option clause which you can do
roll it
half.
over,
And then you get at the same cost. We did for another 1.5 years, and then we tweaked it a bit. Then when we renewed the contract, because we got 4 more aircraft, and then that's working very well. But it's not a one size fits all, because the issue is what's special about the Boeing, sir. 80% is commercial common. So the infamous Spice Jet of the luggage fame, extra luggage fame airline, my favorite airline. So those guys, they operate the Boeing 737NG and there's a couple of other private operators and all that. So they already have those spares here, sir. So it's like if I'm choosing Jeeps for the army and I get a Thar or something, which is obviously your spares will be cheaper. So the commercial common part of the Boeing P-8I is based on the 737-800NG. That's the penultimate. The current latest version is 737 X
Max.
Max, sorry, Max, the infamous Max, which also had some 3-4 crashes. It's hopefully been sorted out. 737-800NG. So that's a perfect aircraft. And so those 80% you're getting off the shelf. And the weapon part and the like a generator is overrated. I mean, in the sense it's, I think 250 versus 200 kVA, because it has to power up all the radars and all that. Otherwise, it's more or less the same. And probably the wings are hugely strengthened.
Yeah.
And another, I mean, useless trivia, but I like to talk about it. The Boeing factory produces something like 35 737 a month.
Yeah.
One P8 takes 3 months to build one 3 months, because the wings, in fact, when they do this regressive, you would have seen it as
I saw them in the stress test.
Regressive testing, they push the wing up by some 5 meters. It's crazy. And as Fona, I flew, I'm a helicopter pilot, but they were sweet to let me fly on controls. So they go at 200 feet and have turn with 30 degrees banks. It's a crazy thing, and because it's stress tested for all that. And the commercial chap goes from place A to place B in absolutely benign conditions. So 80% you're getting the spares off, because inventory management costs money. So here you're getting it off the shelf, and you're maintaining just 20% extra for the weapon part. So that was a really great thing. Now let's talk about the maintenance, sir. There are, last count when I left, there are about 5 agencies, off the top of my head, GMR, that airport guy, they got a fantastic facility in Hyderabad. Airworks Bombay, and they've set up something in Hosur. Air India themselves, they have their facility. Then Boeing also, I think Nagpur or something. I'm slightly shaky on that, but
I think they were doing an MRO in Nagpur. I don't know whether that's come up or not, but they
were doing that. So my memory serves me right. So these guys are fantastic. So what happens is, now where do we go to these MROs? So you are well aware that frontline is what day-to-day flying. You fill fuel, fill oil, fly, come back, and chota mota radio kharab ho gaya, sort it out. That's frontline maintenance. Second line is, you have the air engineering department, air electrical department in air bases. So that little complicated
in the base itself.
In the base itself. Third line or depot level maintenance, it's again varies from aircraft to aircraft. In the Boeing, for instance, they have phase inspections, which are monthly based. So when you say phase 32 phase inspection means after 32 months, it goes to this facility for some 3-4 months. Strip it apart. In fact, when I had gone to see what GMR has to offer, I was shocked. They strip the aircraft apart. All the chairs come out, seats come out and all that. So they're hugely capable. Absolutely world-class thing. So what you're saying is absolutely right. So if we set up this as a hub, and our labor is cheap, expertise is great, so it could be a hub for all airliners. I mean, and choose Airbus. I mean, there are much more Airbus than Boeings in the country. I mean, as you are well aware. I mean, most of this guy, Indigo and all, is some 300-400, and they got an order for some 500 aircraft. So I would go the Airbus way. I'm a traitor because we bought Boeings. But so what you're saying is absolutely right. So we become a hub for this. Fly in those aircraft, do it, and that's the way to go. And also, if we helicopter MH-60R, MH-60R, we've got just 24, and hopefully we'll get more of these. And you got MH-60R all over the place. Singapore, Turkey has some 150, but of course Turkey is not a friend.
I think you can apply the same logic
Australia also has
to even Russian aircraft, because that's also a huge market. You know,
huge,
if you take, I mean, like from the Mi-17s, for example. I mean, they're all across the globe and the region. If you become a regional hub for that in MROs, there is the scope is just immense, I would say.
No doubt. But the sad part, like now, if you see the whole the pros and cons, the Russian problem, like over here, the Boeing. I mean, I had given this figure before also. Like the TUs, we had 6 TUs. In 30 years, they flew 30,000 hours. I mean, again, not pointing fingers at them. They were there with us, beautiful aircraft. The TU is a beauty. It's as a turboprop, it's the fastest aircraft in the world. It can outfly a Harrier. I mean, Harrier is also not flying, but that's the standard of that aircraft. It's still flying in Russia. But in 30 years, we could fly 30,000 hours. In the Boeing, in what must be 7 to 8 years, it's,
You would have crossed that,
I can't give you the figure, it's upwards of 50,000 hours. So the point is, you pay more, you get top-notch quality. And what happens, the Western concept, the airframe is built for the life. Life of an aircraft is generally about 25 years. So it's built for that entire life. The Russian concept is, you have to overhaul it every 2 years. So the point is, it goes back to the fatherland. I mean, every 2 years it goes all the way there, and it is a nightmare, because what happens is now negotiating that contract, our system is so.
No, but again, I mean, if we come back there, that because the servicing requirements are greater, then the market for the service for the MRO is even larger in that sense.
No, good point. But no, but then why haven't we doing it till now?
Yeah.
Till now, all our things that would have been fantastic. But no, but one point is probably our numbers are not like if you're talking about 12 Kamau 31s, it doesn't make sense to make a huge thing over here. So since our relations are good, I hope Trump is not listening. If they were agreeing to let us set up a fantastic thing here, absolutely what you're saying is right. But as of now, B-17s makes sense, because we have huge numbers in the abroad.
And also it's an aircraft that is ubiquitous. You'll find it, right from Africa to anywhere, all over Central Asia, etc. That I think that
so
is an aircraft.
If we have a tie-up with, say, Rosoboron Export or something, and set up something in India, that's a terrific point. And if they are willing to pass on that tech to us, though partially a lot, like in these offsets, now offsets are kind of passive, but those contracts offsets are still in place. You're aware of offsets. 30% of the thing, value has to come back is offsets. So in many of the contracts which I had signed, there was facilities for B-17 and all which were set up. So I would say for Mi-17, 100%. AN-32s also. We have 100 AN-32s. So, but even now, AN-32 goes back to Russia. So I mean, obviously they would have thought of this, and Russia did not let us do it. Another hassle is AN-32. It's also the Russian system. It was all scattered. So, and in the days pre-Cold War time, I mean, Ukraine was the engine guy. So you have Zorya for the GTs. AN-32 engines were Ukraine. So that's why, because of the war, the engines were held up, and a whole lot of our aircraft were held up for want of that. But I agree with you. I mean, if we are able to thaw with Russians, we set this up, it would be great. But I mean, the fact that it's not done, I'm not too hopeful, but there is a fantastic thing if that could happen.
So I think we'll wind up over here. Covered a lot of ground. We've left out certain things like aero engines and all that, because that's another place by itself where we could have probably maybe for another time we can save that. So remains for me once again.
Sorry, I'm sorry. This is I love this topic, so I keep talking. Even our last podcast, I think, was the longest, which I feel very happy. And I must very proudly say the largest hits in your thing is 2000. I feel very proud. So, but for the lay public, I would like to say that, I mean, is not to have an excuse or something that Kaveri engine has taken 50 years and all. But the point is, if you look at the world, how many engine manufacturers are there? I'm not trying to hide behind the thing that we are, I mean, an excuse or something. We're like a country of billions of people, so why can't we build? No doubt. But the fact is, who are the players? There's Rolls-Royce, there's Pratt & Whitney, there's Snecma, there's Safran. There's 5 guys. So any aircraft in the world is or General Electric, G404, which is for the this thing LCA. So the point is, I mean, there's not an excuse, but finally there's just these 5 players, worldwide. So thanks for your time.
But I think there is a lot of space in smaller engines, missile engines, etc., where you can come down. I can agree in large commercial aerospace, that it requires a much higher degree of investment. But I think downstream, maybe there are places where you can build in smaller engines. But that being said, I think we'll call it with, we'll wind up over here. Once again, thanks again, Paina, for taking the time out and spending it with our viewers, and look forward to many such interactions in future.
Thanks so much. It's always great to talk to you. Thank you, sir.
Right.